Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Noam Chomsky, Pied Piper of Poppycock. I could also call the video Manufactured Mendacities, aka Consent, right? Named after a book that Noam Chomsky co-authored in 1988 entitled Manufactured Consent. Anyway, I've selected Noam Chomsky today because he deserves humiliation, ridicule, and to be called out for what he is. He's a charlatan. He's an imposter. Noam Chomsky is a hoaxer, a deceiver, right? That's what he is. He's a quack. He's a fraud. He's a sham, right? He's fake. He's humbug, right? He's a charlatan. He's a water rat. You find him on a ship at sea, right? He's down in the bilge with the bilge water. That's Noam Chomsky. He hangs out in the cesspool area where he belongs, right? Today, Noam Chomsky finds himself in the middle of the desert in Arizona, the University for Arizona, in a research university that collects military funding, eventually from Switzerland, since there is no United States of America, something that Noam Chomsky doesn't seem to understand, but he does know how to get a paycheck. He's a professor emeritus, meaning that he's retired and put out to pasture, but he's still getting a paycheck and he's still collecting money, and he's 97 years old and he hasn't been put down yet. You're right. This knucklehead has survived thousands of assassinations of his cohort, right? Perhaps for all the felonious activities that Noam Chomsky perpetrated on the American people during the COVID hoax, right? No one is safe until everyone is safe. We all need to get vaccinated. We need to mask up, social distance 6 feet, which is the 33rd level of obedience within the maritime law obelisk, right? The pyramid of power. The pyramid of power. The highest level is 33. Well, 33 is 6, which is social distancing, promulgated by none other than the charlatan Noam Chomsky, whose real name is Avron Noam Chomsky, but he goes by Noam. You should know that his good friends are Jeffrey Epstein and Woody Allen, two Jewish cohorts in child trafficking. Didn't Woody Allen marry his own daughter, his stepdaughter? Didn't he? Yeah, Mia Farrow's stepdaughter. Didn't Woody Allen end up having sex with her and then marrying her? That's Noam Chomsky's bud. They go to the theater together. They get on the Lolita Express, head out to St. James Island together. That's Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is a complete criminal, right? He should be arrested. But we don't live in a normal society. We don't live in a civilized society. We live under maritime law, and the captain's in charge. And apparently, the captain of this perverted vessel likes to have water rats roaming around in the bilge. Noam Chomsky is down in the bilge. All right, so let's review some of the comments that have come back to haunt the hypocrite, the hypocrite that is Noam Chomsky, shall we? I think we shall. So here's the thing. Avram Noam Chomsky was born December 7th, 1928. He is known as an American professor and a public intellectual, but we know he's an intellectual midget who takes all his orders from Geneva, Switzerland. He is known for his work in linguistics, which we've learned from my channel means bald face lying. It means sophistry. Noam Chomsky is a professor of sophistry, meaning how to use deception, diversion, and bald face lying whilst appearing to be sincere and genuine. It's really just acting, okay? A really excellent Academy Award winning actor is a professional of linguistics and sophistry. And that's what Noam Chomsky fancies himself as a actor who has not yet collected an Oscar. But Noam Chomsky has received dozens of other awards, which he, of course, doesn't deserve. He most recently received an award from as Nuclear Age Peace Foundation for, I guess, promoting peace whilst the bombs don't drop. And yet, military planes are dropping smart desk messages every 10 minutes everywhere around the world. You won't hear a peep of that from Avram Noam Chomsky. Film an artist, he exists only to waste your time. In 1969, Noam Chomsky appeared on another COINTEL cohort of his William F. Buckley of Yale University. William F. Buckley worked for the CIA for 2 years in Mexico City at the State Department there under the tutelage of E. Howard Hunt. That's right. E. Howard Hunt was William F. Buckley's superior officer in Mexico City. Anyway, then William F. Buckley went on to get a television show on public television that was entitled Firing Line. It was controlled by his attorney control agent. And they invited and booked Noam Chomsky on as a guest. Noam Chomsky was a young professor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which we've learned from my show collects billions of dollars per year from the Department of Energy to make weapons to kill human beings. That his school that he worked 40 years at, Noam Chomsky worked around 40 years at MIT University, which graduated Samuel Bankman-Fried and Doug Leone of Sequoia Capital, who financed Samuel Bankman-Fried's FTX. In other words, MIT has a long-standing, decades-long history of military crimes involving technology companies, companies like Beck Computer, companies like the founders of many electronics companies that graduated from MIT, companies that graduated people like Joy Weiss, who went on to UC Berkeley to create Smart Test with the RAND Corporation. She is a product of MIT. Noam Chomsky went to University of Pennsylvania, however, taught his entire career at MIT. Also is a fellow over at the Harvard University, which is just down the road along the Charles River there in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But Cambridge has brought you bovine synthetic hemoglobins, cow blood. They brought you Timothy Leary and electroshock treatments upon Ted Kaczynski's head. They brought you smart dust. They brought you fake blood. And they brought you fake logistics, aka linguistics, political activism, and social criticism. These are the things that the father of modern linguistics, Noam Chomsky, would have you believe. It's all poppycock, it's all balderdash, and it's all mendacity. Noam Chomsky is not a major figure in analytical philosophy. He's a clueless retard, okay? And he's been farmed out to the desert. He's going to be 98 years old this December 7th. So that is if he doesn't go down from rodent droppings in the way that Betsy Arakawa did in Santa Fe, New Mexico, or in the way that Gene Hackman went down, right? Because Noam Chomsky has outlived Gene Hackman. He's competing with Clint Eastwood to see who the bigger badass is. Yeah, Noam Chomsky is a laureate professor of linguistics. Today, he's at the University of Arizona. Formerly, he was an institute professor of emeritus at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which, of course, has brought us all kinds of problems in Cal Berkeley with neuromodulation, human augmentation, CRISPR therapeutics, and the disabling of human cognition. All right. So Noam Chomsky is associated with having authored 150 books on various topics from linguistics and war and politics, subjects that he knows really nothing about. He doesn't know anything about war. He doesn't know anything about politics. He does know less about sovereignty and freedom. And the only rule that Noam Chomsky survives under is fascism. He survives in a fascist world. You'll never hear him talk about that. He did do postgraduate work in the Harvard Society of Fellows. Noam Chomsky has developed the theory of transformativization grammar, which is lying in left to right. He received a doctorate in 1955. That year, he began teaching at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And in 1957, he emerged as a significant figure in the field of linguistics with his landmark work that was entitled Syntactic Structures, which is how to lie, and words have meanings and meanings matter. But in Noam Chomsky's world, words have false meanings and false meanings matter. That's the kind of linguistics that Noam Chomsky was paid an entire career to pimp and promote. In other words, military gibberish, acronyms and gibberish. the Noam Chomsky hierarchy, which is he calls it the minimalist program. I call it the maximum poppycock mendacity program. It's maximum mendacity and minimalist truth. All right. That's Noam Chomsky. Look, I could go on and on in this knucklehead. He's a fraud. He's a sham. He's a pirate. He's a pirate. He's part of maritime law. He's a water rat. All water rats exist under maritime law. The captain's in charge. We follow orders or people die. It's that simple. Noam Chomsky. It truly is. Let's tell you a little story that happened with the Firing Line talk show program, which is a COINTELPRO counterintelligence program starring William F. Buckley. April 3rd, 1969, Noam Chomsky was booked to appear, mainly to pimp out and promote his new book at the time. His new book at the time was entitled American Power and the New Mandarins, which is a poppycock mendacity balderdash of a book. That was why he appeared on the talk show, to promote his book and the royalty payments that he theoretically might assume, if anyone ever actually bought his book, which I think very few people bought anything that was written by Noam Chomsky. Anyway, besides the CIA buying the book, what you should know is on that show, they discussed the Vietnam War, which was raging at that time. April 3rd, 1969, we had not yet learned of the My Lai massacre. That is not reported until September 6, 1969. And Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger have not yet been murdered. But the My Lai massacre had happened, and 503 innocent civilians had died on March 16, 1968. There was no discussion of the My Lai massacre on the William F. Buckley show, of course. They also did not discuss Strategic Hamlet Program. They didn't discuss Operation Phoenix, which existed at least since the Tet Offensive, which would have been February 1968. William Buckley nor Noam Chomsky said anything about Operation Phoenix. They didn't talk about Strategic Hamlet Program. They didn't talk about Agroville, which is a program that was introduced before Noam Chomsky was even known on the radar screen. While he was a teacher, a professor at MIT, Agroville was rolled out from the Minnesota State University, Michigan State University created Agroville. Then in 1961, the Rand Corporation renamed it Strategic Hamlet Program. And yet, even that those two things had happened already, the learned Noam Chomsky, who pretends to be a intellectual giant, he never mentions that Michigan State University created Agroville or that the Rand Corporation was involved in colonialism under the guise of fascism, under the guise of Democratic Republic America in Vietnam to support the French. And you don't hear that anywhere in this pseudo debate between William Buckley, who supports the Vietnam War, and Noam Chomsky, who's ambiguous but appears to be opposed to all wars in general. However, he does collect his paycheck from contractors that are dedicated to terrorism and war, which is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So, in order to be alive in the Noam Chomsky metasphere, you got to be a hypocrite, right? Noam Chomsky, a complete hypocrite. He gets paid by military Department of Energy and Department of Defense and DARPA. That's who pays MIT, who in turn gives him a salary. And then William F. Buckley, who's a Yale Skull and Bones secret society member who worked for the CIA in Mexico City for E. Howard Hunt, who will bring you the John Kennedy assassination and participation in Watergate burglaries. He was the coordinator of the burglaries, if you believe the transcript. And this is William F. Buckley, who actually is more like best friends with Noam Chomsky. They work for the same team. They're on the same team, but they pretend to disagree, and that this was a one and done appointment booking, that Noam Chomsky never again appeared on the Firing Line talk show with William Buckley. This was April 3rd, 1969. This adds to the legend that is not Abram Noam Chomsky. In other words, he couldn't be closer with William F. Buckley, and yet they appear to be oil and vinegar, right? They're just like diametrically opposed. But the reality is they're buds. just like E. Howard Hunt is, right? Just like William Wild Bill Donovan was, just like James Angleton was. All right, just like David Atlee Phillips is. All right. So what I want you to know is that Noam Chomsky is a big supporter of Israel, which is a Swiss bank colony. In other words, Noam Chomsky believes in our 13-stripe American flag. He believes in Swiss bank authority, which is really who guarantees his paycheck. And what do you expect from a fraud, a quack, a sham, a fake, a humbug, a hoodwinker, a cheat, a charlatan, a pirate, a water rat? Well, you expect hypocrisy. No one is safe until everyone is safe, until Noam is off the streets, right? We all need to get vaccinated. And by the way, the vaccine is safe and effective. But if the vaccine, untested with no clinical trials, publicized to the public, they did private trials, right? And it's not about anything to do with any virus. It's about connecting people to the cloud, tethering them to the HAL 9000. That's what the vaccine is. It's graphene, it's aluminum, it's lithium, it's arsenic poison. It's all the things that you'll find inside of a cellular mobile telephone. That's what's in the vaccine. And that's what Noam Chomsky pimps out. All right. So then in 1988, he writes this idiotic book where he wrongly talks about promoting manufactured consent, which is something that Noam Chomsky is paid to do. He's in the manufactured consent business. The problem is that Noam Chomsky personally doesn't know anything about manufactured consent other than writing books where he calls it the American Power and the New Mannequins. And then later he comes up with his sophistry book, which I've just a moment, I will be right back. I had it right here. Okay, I'm back. And what I want to tell you is the 1988 book authored by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky is entitled Manufacturing Consent, the Political Economy of the Mass Media. This is, of course, blaming the media for all of our problems when the root of the problems are Swiss bank anthropology, Swiss bank funding, and financing of all Hunger Games. So again, the clueless, lost in space, Noam Chomsky, the quack, the fraud, the sham, the fake, the hoaxer, the imposter, the deceiver, the hoodwinker, the cheat, the charlatan, the water rat pirate, Noam Chomsky protects and conceals his master, his puppeteer. His puppeteer is Swiss Bank, Geneva, Switzerland. That's who his puppeteer is. So instead of focusing on the enemy, which is Switzerland, he focuses on a metaverse of political economy. There's no such thing as a political economy. There's no such thing as mass media. What there is a theatrical presentation funded and financed by Switzerland. They call it acting. And that's what Donald Trump is. That's what Noam Chomsky is. That's what Joe Biden was, right? That's what Nancy Pelosi is, Dianne Feinstein, Paul Pelosi, Arnold Screw Your Freedom Schwarzenegger. That's who Jesse Ventura is. That's who Stu Peters is. That's who Tucker Carlson is. That's who Tucker Carlson's father was, Dick Carlson. The voice of public radio was Dick Carlson. He was also an ambassador for the State Department of the United States, which is code for CIA. That's what Henry Kissinger was, George Shultz, Caspar Weinberger, right? That's what Ed Meese was. That's what Ronald Reagan was. In other words, they were manufactured mannequins. They were mannequins who were manufactured. Anyway, it talks about a political propaganda model of communications where you rinse and repeat things a million times so that people believe it must be true, because if it weren't true, there'd be a dissenting opinion. So Noam Chomsky writes a book with Edward Herman doing most of the writing that tries to bully and cause people into self-censorship so that they remain silent. And in a maritime law system, silence is construed as affirmation. It's for consent. Silence equals consent. Self-censorship is consent. It's a form of overt coercion. Do you understand what I'm saying? Noam Chomsky writes a book where he pretends to be an expert on overt coercion in the form of self-censorship. And he does this in 1988. However, the year that Ivy Love Getty was married, on the steps that Dan White walked up to kill George Moscone and Harvey Milk, a double homicide, back in November 1978, on those very steps on November 7th, 2021, during the height of COVID, where everybody was masked up and you were required to get a vaccine or have a vax passport, Nancy Pelosi recites the vows for Tobias Engel and Ivy Love Getty. No one is wearing a mask on those stairs. Nancy Pelosi is not wearing her mask. This is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Ivy Love Getty not wearing her mask. Tobias Engel not wearing his mask. And Gavin Newsom, who's observing it, he's the governor of California, he's wearing his face diaper. Right. So you have a hypocrisy going on during a wedding. Anyway, that very same year, um, just a month earlier in October, Noam Chomsky opened his pie hole. MIT professor emeritus and political activist Noam Chomsky said that he believes while unvaccinated people have the right to refuse a COVID jab, they should, quote, have the decency to isolate, end quote, from the community for safety of others. But why, Noam Chomsky? If the vaccine is safe and effective, why do you care? I mean, let all the unvaccinated people. Remember, there's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's what one of my relatives told me before I hung up the phone on her. And I said, stay away from small children. Noam Chomsky was asked in the interview whether the COVID vaccine should be required when he made that remark. A clip of his response has now garnered 1.9 million views on the Twitter and has been met with mixed reaction. Quote, says Noam, people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is to not force them to, but rather insist that they be isolated. Insist? That sounds like force. Anyway, if people decide, quote, I am willing to be in danger to the community by refusing to vaccinate, then they should say, well, I also have the decency to isolate myself. I don't want the vaccine, but I don't want to have the right to run around harming people. That should be a convention, says Noam Chomsky. What a moron. I mean, he's a blithering idiot, right? If the vaccine is safe and effective and it works, according to Noam Chomsky, how could an unvaccinated person possibly endanger a vaccinated person? Unless the vaccine doesn't work and you are playing a linguistics game to intimidate every person to be tethered to the cloud. Because the only thing the vaccine does is a clot shot. It puts foreign objects of aluminum or graphene and plastics, polymers, lithium, and arsenic into your body, which are foreign and do not belong in your human body, puts it in there where all the radiation poisoning everywhere to be found in our society, from LED streetlights to ring cameras to smart meters, to drones overhead, to all the aluminum chalk in our breathable air space, in our troposphere, all the pollution in our soil and water and vaccinated farm animals. When you add all the radiation up, it will neuromodulate with the vaccine to create a tethering to the cloud. So, Noam Chomsky, not only have you got it wrong linguistically, you're just a bald faced liar and you're a mental midget. You are an intellectual dwarf. All right. You should be quiet. No one should listen to you. You should be isolated in the middle of the desert where you are, and you should live in a teepee tent somewhere out in the desert. Anyway, this scholar compared to the refusal to get vaccinated of people who refuse to obey traffic rules. Noam Chomsky doubled down on his call to segregate the unvaccinated from our society. How will we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem. And it's not a problem, Noam. We're just going to take the tray that you're eating off of. Of course, you're probably eating bugs, right? Suppose there are people who say it's an attack on my liberty to make me stop at a red light. Hey, it's government overreach. They don't want the state to have the power over my private life. Well, such people should have the decency to remove themselves from the community, says Noam. If they refuse to do that, then measures have to be taken to safeguard the community from them. How about imprisoning people like Noam Chomsky in solitary confinement? Would that keep Noam nice and safe in a concrete closet with no windows? I think that actually solves the problem. All right. Noam Chomsky is trending because he wants to get tough on people who choose to stay unvaccinated. Well, anyway, here's the thing. I disobeyed all of the Noam Chomsky rules. I didn't get vaccinated, right? I didn't social distance. I didn't wear a mask. And I didn't follow the mental psychosis of mass psychosis group think, hive mentality. You know, they had these idiotic rules. I'm out walking my dog, not wearing a mask. And then I get stopped by a dog walker who is wearing a mask. And I said, well, your dog's not wearing a mask. He goes, dogs don't have to wear masks. I said, well, who said that? Did Anthony Fauci say that? Did Noam Chomsky say that? And of course, the answer is no. But everybody knows horses and dogs don't have to wear face diapers. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't get a memo on that. I didn't see any memo on that. And what kind of hypocrite has to wear a face diaper to go to a restaurant to pick up a to-go order? But then if you choose to sit down in the dining room, you can remove your mask for dining in. Dining in was maskless during the height of COVID. Just like when you want to get married on November 7th, 2021, and your name is Getty or your name is Pelosi, you doesn't have to wear a face diaper. But everybody else has to, but you don't. How come the people eating food sitting at the table are not endangering the other people? You know, there most clearly was never a pandemic of unvaccinated people. That's a bald faced linguistical lie. Linguistical lies. And today we have vax passports, digital wallets that your bank will pimp you out on, real ID verified, biometrics, eyeball recognition, thumbprint recognition. This all stems from November 7th, 2021, with Nancy Pelosi reciting the vows to Ivy Love Getty and Tobias Engel, whose marriage was on the rocks within 180 days of those vows. They were separated within 6 months and they were divorced a year later. So, what I'm saying is, when you participate in a satanic wedding on the staircase of a double homicide murder of George Moscone and Harvey Milk, that's a marriage that will not last. That's what I'm saying. And Noam Chomsky and his brittle reputation, which is supported by Jeffrey Epstein and Woody Allen, two of the greatest charlatans that have ever lived, is how far we've fallen in our society. So anyway, just forget Donald Trump, forget Noam Chomsky, and forget the COVID vaccine, forget the bird flu and the monkeypox vaccines too, forget the annual flu shot, forget your medical doctor, just tune him out. He's bribed by Medicare and United Health Group. That's who runs your medicine program. That's who runs your acute care hospital and all your nurses. They are all completely reading the slogans safe and effective. They haven't got the foggiest idea what is true and what is false. All right. So I'm going to do another video where I'm going to introduce you to other aspects of military linguistics in our society. Besides manufactured consent, we also have the reference to facts that are not in evidence, not in the public lexicon of terms. And we also have what satanic judges, Superior Court judges who wear black robes and face diapers, they wield judicial notice, the quote unquote judicial notice. They wield that like a dagger in their courtroom. So we're going to review judicial notice, which is an overused linguistical term of fraud in a courtroom exercised by the judge. And then we're going to refer to facts not in evidence. And we're going to also review the term manufactured consent, or what I call manufactured mendacity. Thanks for listening. Do like and share my videos. As you know, I am heavily shadow banned. Check the show notes below. I have some photographs for you to study. Bye-bye now.